If you've just been diagnosed with SIBO, or maybe you keep relapsing and don't understand why, this video is for you. The most important thing you can do is understand SIBO and what is happening inside of your body, because without this understanding, you will keep relapsing. In this video, I'm going to explain why SIBO develops, why it keeps coming back, or why it manifested in the first place, and what exactly your first 24 hours should look like with a meal plan, and with you understanding why you're eating the specific way I'm recommending. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the food, the physiology, the metabolism, how things are broken down and absorbed in the body, what microbes feed on, and the reasoning behind all of it. This is not a quick fix, but this is the education I wish someone could have given me when I was sick. So let's get started. Brief recap. If you've watched my previous videos, there are a few things that we went over that we already know about what is the cause behind SIBO. And the reason why it's important to know the cause is because when you understand the reason why the problem manifested for the first time in your body, you help prevent a relapse. And the reason why relapses are a big deal in digestive problems in digestive pathologies is because relapses are very highly reoccurring in these cases. So relapse happens frequently in GI disorders when you don't know the cause. And so the reason why you watch the cause video is so that when you watch this video, it makes sense. So getting in real quick, the symptoms. What is the main symptom when we are dealing with SIBO? SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and that means after your mouth, your esophagus, your stomach, you go into the small intestine. The small intestine is broken up into 3 sections. You have your duodenum, your jejunum, and then your ileum. The duodenum is the smallest section, and it is the mixing bowl. That is where all of the things go in after you've chewed your food. Your stomach has beaten it up, and then it gets squirted out into the first section of the small intestine. So you're usually from the mouth to the stomach, depending on how much fat you've had. Your stomach will empty slower the fattier your meal. But if by you've finished your meal, you've gotten up, you've done something, you've moved on from your meal, if 30 minutes afterwards you start feeling bad, you have the first indicator of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and that sensation is a sensation of bloating, fullness, trapped air. And so you have this, I feel big, I feel like a balloon, because you have little microbes that are producing either hydrogen or methane gas. And these 2 gases are the gases that we use to determine if you have a SIBO diagnosis, because the human cells don't make hydrogen and they don't make methane either. Only bacteria, well, only microbes make hydrogen and methane. And so as you eat food and these guys go and they eat your food, they are going to eat the food and they will fart out gas. And that gas goes from your small intestine, it goes into your circulation, it then goes up into your respiratory tract, and then you would then either burp it out or breathe it out. And so if you have a presence of hydrogen gas or methane gas within your breath, that we can use as a determinant of do you have SIBO? And so let's dive in a little bit more. One last thing before we get into the nitty-gritty. The antimicrobial approaches. So when someone is recommending oregano oil, these are like a carpet bomb to the intestinal tract. The oregano oil, yes, it will maybe It'll definitely kill microbes, but it will still lead you to having a higher chance of relapse. Why? Because when you take oregano oil and you kill the SIBO bacteria and you do feel better, which is indicative of you did a good job, you still haven't fixed your stomach acid levels, your bile salts aren't releasing properly, and or your pancreatic enzymes aren't functioning properly, and or you have a hypocaloric diet and your digestion is too slow. When you have slow digestion, you leave the door open for pathogenic, opportunistic bacteria to come in and eat. Yes, if you kill these microbes, you will eventually relapse back. You don't need to use oregano oil as a supplement. I do think that there are other things out there, and I do think antimicrobials are fantastic. Something more along the lines of a gas destroying type of carminative. So that would be something like ginger. You could use anise, star anise. You could use licorice. You could use dill. You could use, there are a multitude of herbal ingredients that are natural. You could even, how about you consider making a meal that uses a lot of oregano? That would be a lot better than taking this capsule that is so mega concentrated. Let's pay attention to how we are addressing our body. And so let's eat real foods. And what real foods can we have to help solve SIBO so that we don't relapse just because we've destroyed our microbes? These microbes will naturally go away when we have improved stomach acid, bile, pancreatic enzymes, a fast enough transit, and a eucaloric diet or hyper, aka not a hypocaloric diet. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about these. If you have a hypocaloric diet, first of all, you are not giving your body enough food, enough energy. Stomach acid, if you have a hypocaloric diet, you are not giving your body the energy it requires in order to fight off the infection that is within you. You are handicapping yourself, and you are making it harder for your body to come up out of this problem. You have to have, so then, fast enough transit that goes into better hydration as well. You have to have good hydration. You have to have enough proteins. Yes, you need carbs that won't cause a reaction. You need enough fats. And so let's talk about those types of foods. Let's talk about those foods. The first thing that we need to pay attention to is, have we told our stomach that we are going to be eating? Can we give it a notification? Hey, we're going to start having a meal soon. More calories are going to come in. Can we ramp it up? And so first and foremost, upon waking, a glass, this much, a glass full of not hot water, warm water. Upon waking, warm water. This flushes the toxins from overnight, and it helps wake up the stomach. You are 37 degrees Celsius. Warm water is about usually between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius, and or like 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not to be hot to warm you up. It's to be warm. And what you're doing is you're not trying to burn your stomach. You are trying to gently wake up your stomach, and usually with this, often, it will cause a bowel movement. If you haven't been doing this before. This warm water, not coffee, not tea, water, water, water. If you want like the tiniest pinch of salt. What I would personally do is I would get my water boiler and I would set it to 60 degrees Celsius and I would fill it up and I would, like go get dressed and then I'd come back and it would have cooled down a little bit and then I would stand there and I would drink my warm water. It would take me like maybe a minute or two and I would go and then I would keep going, and within 10, sometimes rather quickly, within 5, 10, 15 minutes, there's a morning bowel movement that happens. So there's that. What we're talking about now is the stomach. Next, bitter greens. So this is endive, arugula, bitter orange. The salad, the fibers of the salad and the bitterness of these bitter greens stimulates the stomach in a interesting way to help the bitter compounds help wake up the stomach to say, let's produce some acid. And so the bitter greens need to be incorporated before you have, I mean, you can have it for breakfast if you want, but it's just more common to have it before lunch or dinner. And that would be your pretty thing. And it's not a big, it's literally a handful or two of these things, and it's 10 minutes before you have your actual meal. It's not a salad. It's just greens. If not, you can do digestive bitters, but it is not really the same thing, but they can be helpful. And so then you would do like a bitter orange infusion, and you could even do a bitter orange tincture, and that would work. Now, you can do something similar to this. It doesn't need to be as warm, but it can. Even half, but a tablespoon or two of something very lightly acidic. So like lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, even pickle juice, something delightfully acidic, diluted in water or not, your choice. But the acidity will also come into the stomach. As it hits the stomach, it will stimulate it and it will help itself create more acid. You're not wanting to literally drink pickle juice, like a full thing of pickle juice, because you don't want the acidity to be so much that it tells the stomach that it doesn't need to work. You want a light acid touch for it to stimulate the stomach, but not for the stomach to say, oh, you got it, I don't need to work. Something, a tablespoon or two, or even like a shot glass of lemon juice, pickle juice, apple cider vinegar. Those are the main ones. So, acid stimulation. And the interesting thing about all this is that when you back up and you think about it, it is so common. And, I live here in France, which I'm loving, but like acid stimulation, red wine before a meal, like a small thing of red wine, and then you would have a bitter green arugula salad, and then you'd come in and you would have a steak with some like potatoes or like this like some type of culinary tradition that makes sense. And as we keep going, we'll see why these things make sense. But I want you to, as we're doing this, I want you to have the capacity to recognize this is a well-balanced diet in traditional senses. And so, a SIBO diet shouldn't necessarily be this medical diet that's so restrictive that you can't go out and do things with company. You can absolutely go out and, I'm not sure how well you would do with wine, but like you could go out and you could have like hot water with lemon juice and have your arugula salad, and then and then you'd have like your meat and your carb. And so let's get into that. What are the meat and carbs that we're going to be talking about? I'm going to keep that because if you don't pay attention and you keep relapsing, you keep feeling better than relapsing, you need to maybe watch my video or book an appointment. I'm teasing. Okay, so first things first, meat. What is meat? Meat has protein, so amino acids, and these amino acids, they are going to be the building blocks of your enzymes, of the functions that work in your body. Your stomach acid, we talked about this beforehand, but your stomach acid, it is not Frankenstein lemon juice. It doesn't appear out of thin air and all of a sudden you have stomach acid. No, literally, you must have zinc, chloride, and B1. You must have zinc, have chloride, and have B1 in your diet, or else you will not create enough stomach acid to digest your meals. And if you have a hard time digesting your meals, you are maybe requiring a better diet. And some of these do better with just supplementation. So sometimes like a B complex can be helpful. But once you have sufficient zinc, chloride, and B1, your stomach acid production goes up and you have the ability to digest your proteins better, and that sets up the digestive cascade very well so that as the food goes from your stomach into the small intestine, your small intestine says, oh, great, thank you stomach for doing such a good job. Now I can do this the right way, digest the food even farther down. It'll secrete its bile salts and its pancreatic enzymes. And then by the time it gets farther down, the food you've eaten has been digested to a point where your SIBO microbes can't feast on them because there's no food left. That's the goal. So, chloride. So, your stomach acid is hydrochloric acid, which is hydrogen. You know, you have that with everything. But the chloride, that is your salt. So, you need salt, which is NaCl. We all know that. Next, your zinc. All right, so for zinc, we are going to go back into stomach acid. This is your stomach acid. How is it that this hydrogen came in? So your parietal cells, and so this proton pump requires zinc to function. And so that's why zinc is important in stomach acid production. And so next, for vitamin B1, which is thiamine, this one actually helps with your nerve function. And you'll see it in a lot of like POTS or dysautonomia or like nervous system types of protocols, because and especially under the form of benfotiamine, regular vitamin B1 will be sufficient here, and if you do have low stomach acid, just a regular B complex that has just a normal vitamin B1, it usually is sufficient, especially since vitamin B1, just a methodical approach to B vitamins, zinc, and chloride. You don't need to go megadosing. It's not important, because even if you are megadosing and you're hypocaloric, your body physically cannot use all of those vitamins and you're just peeing them out. Just seriously, full stop. You being hypocaloric and under eating makes it so that your body can't absorb, because absorption and utilization of the vitamins that you're taking in, that requires energy. And if you are low in energy, low in calories, your body can't use them. So no, you don't need an astronomical amount. You need just a regular, correct amount. And your body will do it. Your body is ready and willing and excited to work appropriately and to function the right way when it's given the right things to do the job that it needs to do. So chloride obviously is with salt. Zinc is with your red meats, shellfish, and more redder proteins. And B1, you get that through pork. That being said, your B1 is actually going to be better through fermented foods, and that includes raw dairy products. So if you have like a raw cheese section in your supermarket, and you probably should, this should be worldwide, that would be a better source for your vitamin B1, because we will say vitamin B1 is present in pork, but vitamin B1 gets destroyed when you cook it to a certain temperature. And so you need to have a non-cooked version of B1 in order for you to satisfy that B1 requirement. Same thing goes for vitamin B6. A lot of people are deficient in some of these B vitamins, but it's because all of their foods are just cooked, and there's no, in these vitamins that get destroyed at a certain temperature, they don't ever actually get them in the body. And so this brings also into the conversation the idea of sushi, or maybe like a beef tartare, or maybe even like a carpaccio, or maybe even like a ceviche. And these are raw meat types of products or just not overcooked. And it's something to consider. You know, maybe sushi is easy for you to eat, and that would be, you would have to double check the B1 status of the fish that you're consuming, but that would probably be an easier way to get your temperature sensitive B vitamins. So you wake up, in summary, you wake up, warm water. Breakfast comes, talk about that in a second. Lunch hits, you have another lightly acidic warm drink. You have a bitter green salad, or something that has bitters in it so that it stimulates the digestive process. And then you sit down and you have a meal that has meat in it and that has enough salt in it, because you're wanting your zinc, your chloride, and your B vitamins. And so now we're going to talk about carbohydrates. All right, so I'm going to say words that probably are going to go against what you've been told. Carbohydrates. So we are going to have green lights, carbs, and we are going to have red lights. Not all carbs are bad on SIBO. Depending on the microbes that you have that are part of your small intestinal microbial overgrowth, the microbes that are causing you pain, those ones you need to pay attention to. The other carbs are safe for you to eat. And if you are reactive, and so I need everyone to pay attention, if you are reactive on the green light carbohydrates that I'm going to mention, you do not have SIBO as a primary disorder. Maybe you have histamine intolerance, maybe you have MCAS, maybe you have a severe stomach acid deficiency, maybe you have a pancreatic amylase enzyme concern. If the green light carbs are a problem for you, please watch the video still, because the information is still good, but don't be dismissive just because your individual case isn't making sense. If the green light carbs are a problem for you, it tells you this gives you more information about what's going on inside of your body, because there are SIBO, let's call them schools, and they have supported this evidence that I'm going to show you. And if this didn't work, these schools wouldn't exist, and these programs wouldn't exist. And so let's dive in. Your main red lights. So this is going to go into the FODMAP protocol. So you have FODMAP, fermentable oligodisaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. So this study, hang on, which is this study, if you want to learn about FODMAP, it is a fantastic study for you guys to learn about if it is relevant for your case. And so fermentable, these are all, so monosaccharides, so simple sugars, disaccharides, oligosaccharides. These are all sugars that ferment within the gut. When microbes, so let's go back. Microbe fermentation creates hydrogen gas or methane gas. They do not create anything else. So when you are eating any of these sugars, and we'll talk about them, and you're creating this type of gas coming up out of you. And so these are all prebiotic fibers. P-R-E, prebiotic fibers. What's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic? A prebiotic is something that feeds a bacteria. A probiotic is that bacteria. A probiotic is a live, active biotic, a live, active microbe that is living within your gut, or that is, within a capsule. And the prebiotic is the thing that feeds that specific microbe. And so if you have microbes in your gut, you want to not give the fibers that feed it. And when you do, you create gas, expansion, and an upset tummy. That is the reason why you are not feeling well. You've given the food to these microbes, and they are fermenting, creating gas. And why is this happening? It's because these fibers, these prebiotic fibers, the human body cannot digest it. We cannot digest it. We don't have the enzymes, we don't have the digestive capacity to digest these things. But in a healthy gut, when you eat these things and they go through, so you have the stomach, and then it goes down into the small intestine, and then it makes its way up through the large intestine. When these guys, they make it all the way through, and they make it here to the large intestine, that helps you create a rich microbiome that gives you health. So what this means is that these foods, you cannot have them while you have this concern, while you have SIBO. But when you're done with the program and you graduate out and you feel better, you can easily, gently, spoonfuls at a time, reintroduce these foods, and you should feel better, and it should not cause gas. And it's SIBO is not something that we haven't found a cure to. People make it more complicated than it should be. It is an involved diet, but it is absolutely curable. It is not a life sentence. And so let's get into those FODMAP carbohydrates that we should not be eating while we have SIBO. So for FODMAPs, your oligosaccharides are going to be chains of saccharide molecules that the body cannot break down, but microbes can. And so that includes beans, so all types of beans, peas, lentils, then also alliums, which are onions and garlic, and then cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, and it includes whole wheat or whole grains, not refined grains, interestingly, but when you have a whole grain, the husk, the shell around those grains, those can cause an issue with bloating for those with SIBO. And so then next, and all of these foods need to be eliminated from the diet and then reintroduced one at a time to see, is this the letter that is causing me a problem. And when you identify the letter that causes you symptoms, you eliminate that letter for a long enough period of time, and then you will feel better eventually. And then you reintroduce them 6 to 8 weeks later, or depending on how fast your progress is, and you'll be able to reintroduce them successfully without causing a relapse. And so you eliminate beans, alliums, cruciferous vegetables, and then you eliminate, those are your oligosaccharides, and then you eliminate your disaccharides, and that is dairy. So because lactose is your disaccharide with a galactose and lactose chained together, and then your monosaccharides, and those are fructose. And so, and then also, that also includes all things like if you're taking a prebiotic fiber supplement, like inulin, for example, that can be a reason why you are not feeling well. Then fruit sugars, so like anything that has a very high fructose load, and so those would be like watermelons, apples, or and so then you would go into more low carbohydrate fruits, and then you would go from there. And then afterwards you have, and so stone fruits usually are pretty reactive, and then, you basically just go off the list and you just monitor. Where am I feeling the most tension in my stomach? And so then when I eliminate them, do I feel better? When I have more of a non-reactive meal, how do I feel? When I look at people that are working on SIBO or a fermentation in the gut type of situation, because it could be SIBO, it could be IBS, it could be IMO, it could be small intestinal fungal overgrowth, it could be something different. Usually fruits are one of the less reactive components compared to the beans, lentils, the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, the harder, greener vegetables. And now notice that as I said all of this, I did not mention salad greens. When we were talking earlier about the bitter greens, those don't fall into the same category, and they don't really have the same fibers that cause the digestive distress that broccoli may cause. And so the interesting thing is that sometimes people won't do well on like something fibrous like an apple, but if they were to go have apple juice, the fiber is taken away and they digest it better because it's absorbed farther up and it doesn't actually make it all the way down. And so this brings into the conversation how processed your meals are, as in like if you're eating a raw carrot, that is not the same thing as eating something that you've cooked for a long time and that you've mixed up into a soup and that becomes like this carrot soup thing that's very soft. Those are broken down very easily, and those types of food culinary techniques need to be taken into consideration. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have more of like a softer food diet. I'm not saying you can't have something crunchy, but if you're overly consuming undercooked or crunchier vegetables besides the bitter greens, you would want to pay attention. Do I feel better when I have more cooked, softer foods so that you're gentler on your digestive system? It is not lost on me the fact that this can be very overwhelming. I get it. I will have some resources available on my website, which will be in the description below. Symptoms for SIBO happen between usually 30 and 90 minutes of your eating, after eating. And so if you take a picture of what you ate and then you get symptoms, it can help you identify, oh, there was something in there, and you can have a red flag go up saying, I think I found a culprit, and that helps you identify the problematic microbes that are causing pain. I just tossed everything out. I did a really big elimination diet and I add things back in one at a time. And now I can literally eat everything and anything. And so it's quite nice. But the taking everything out and then reintroducing it one at a time is really similar to like turning your computer off and on again. You're restarting the computer, you're restarting it, and the body's like, oh yeah, I had a hard time digesting that thing before, but because I had a break, I had time to gather my enzymes, my this, my that, my zinc, my chloride, my magnesium, and now that I had a break and I was able to rest, when I'm getting this food again, now I'm better equipped to digest this food, and so then you have less symptoms, and then when you eat a food that previously caused symptoms, you take a break from it and then you come back and it doesn't cause symptoms. That's a huge victory, and that is super important to celebrate. All right, so now we're going to move over to the green light. And what we need to keep in mind as we go through this is, first of all, I want to encourage you to be open-minded, but the foods here are very much so the traditional eat the rainbow. It's a good thing to have, all these things that are fibrous. And, here I am, and I'm saying, well, no, these fibers are hurting you and they're causing gas. And so having all this fiber isn't helpful for you right now. And you don't need to eat low fiber forever, but for the moment, for this 6 to 8 week period, it's probably not a good idea. And so you need to be a little bit, let's say, starchier in your approach. And so you have a ton of people that have put together programs. I did the GAPS diet. I did the carnivore diet. I did all of the diets. And so what this video is me circling back after having done all of it and giving you my report. I'm telling you what has worked and what I found out, what I've learned. And this is part of the reason why I'm in the nutrition field, is because I had a hard time and I'm wanting to be helpful, because when I was having gas and bloating and not feeling well, I would have killed for a video like this that would have explained it to me, because I was in nutrition school and I was learning diddly squat that was actually helpful. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the stomach, and then we're going to talk about the duodenum. So stomach, and then here will be our cut from the stomach to the small intestine. And this section will be and this is the shortest section. This is the mixing bowl. And then we will have our jejunum. We'll just break it up into threes. But keep in mind, shortest, middlest, longest section of the small intestine. And then they go up into the large intestine, which is enormous. And the reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to talk about carbohydrate digestion and its positioning in the body on more of a step-by-step, what is the physiology happening within the body. So a lot of the times so we're going to extend out here. This is going to be the colon, the large intestine, and this is where a lot of your microbes, where your microbiome is, so colon, and this is where you'll make your stool. And the microbes in SIBO, they have worked their way back up, and you technically have a little bit down here, but it should be less and less as you make your way up. And so what the goal is for you to eat your food and for it to, so for you to eat it, and then eventually it peters out, you've got nothing left by the time that you hit where the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is located, so the microbes don't have any food. And so what that means, well, what is it that we have to do? We have to eat the carbohydrates that digest the fastest. So fast, don't confuse simple sugars. Don't think that I'm saying pure white sugar. I'm talking about simpler starches that are easier to digest. You will digest a plain white potato much faster than you'll digest the same amount in broccoli. Always. So faster digesting, aka absorbing carbs. CHO. CHO is an abbreviation for carbohydrates because it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's what a carbohydrate is. It's just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. All right, so because I know that some of you are itching at me to get to the point, so green light, 1/2 cup of rice or potatoes per meal. If you do too much, too fast, you will hurt your stomach because your stomach, when you go from, usually a lot of SIBO people are low carbohydrate. When you go increase the carbohydrates too fast, your pancreas has down-regulated its carbohydrate digesting capacity, and you need to introduce carbohydrates slowly, but they do need to be present and they do need to be increased to about 1/2 cup. And so 1/2 cup of rice and potatoes per meal. And these are just examples, but it's 1/2 cup per meal, maybe slightly more at breakfast. Why do we need carbs? Carbs they're multi-purpose, just like how proteins are multi-purpose and just like how fats are multi-purpose. Your carbohydrates are multi-purpose. When you have higher carbs, all of you should know this, but protein is the building block, and carbs and fat equal energy. Fat is very expensive to break down, which is why it has 9 calories per gram compared to carbohydrates and protein, which both have 4 calories per gram. The higher calories, the harder the body works to break it down. And so your carbohydrates are an easy, accessible source of energy for the body to use. And now I'm not saying that keto is not good for SIBO, but it is not appropriate for SIBO in the context of when you take away carbohydrates, you effectively slow down you raise satiety. So keto slash, and I did keto. I did 0 carb. I did the whole thing. So keto slash low carb. When you have such high fat, moderate protein, low carbs, the fat slows down your digestion, and so the speed at which the food moves through your body is slower always when you have a higher fat diet as compared to when you have a higher carb diet. It moves through the system faster. Stagnation, the slowness of the food through your digestive system, means that the bacteria have more time to feast on the fibers that you're also eating. In any case, when you are doing traditional keto low carb, which means that you're doing moderate, you're cooking your stuff in lots of fat, and you're having sufficient amount of protein, and you're filling out the rest with your vegetables, and those fibers in those vegetables, those fibers plus slow fat, because the fat slows down your digestion, that is a recipe for giving these microbes time to eat these fibers. But I'm not saying that you need a low fat approach. When I talk about SIBO, I recommend something similar to a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 protein, fat, carbs, just because the body is going to want sufficiency in all areas. All of them are good. Being so dominant in the fat area is going to cause these types of issues. So you just want to be mindful. This is what I have found through my experience. And not that we need a high carbohydrate diet, but a moderate carbohydrate diet. When you add carbs to the diet, they help you speed up they speed up transit time. All right, so how do I say this the right way? So your fats and fibers, so butter, oil, avocados, your fats are going to slow down digestion just because they're metabolically dense and they take time to break down and provide energy. That it has a slowing action on the digestive system. Same thing for fibers. Fibers, your body physically can't break down a fiber, and so that's why it causes it to slow down. It creates bulk in the system, and it has to be moved through the system at a slower speed. And so I don't want to say that carbs speed up digestion because I want to be accurate with my words, but carbs do not have that same slowing effect that fats and fibers provide. All right, so let's give an example of carbohydrate metabolism, and let's use a really easy example that everyone knows about, rice. So rice, and it's going to have a chain of glucose molecules that are, well, it's a chain, you know, they are all attached to one another, and it's going to be really, really long, and it's going to be so starchy. And this is a polymer, a chain of glucose molecules. So when you have a grain of rice and you bite into it and you release the starch, you break up the rice grain, it goes in, so you put it into the mouth, you chew it up, your salivary amylase is going to break it up into larger chains. This is going to be kind of more of like a first step. This is not going to be the major site of carbohydrate digestion, but it is the first part. The main interest of the mouth digesting carbohydrates is more of the mechanical feature of you physically breaking up your food, because as you break up your food, you have to break it up enough so that literally as it goes through here, your body has the capacity to transform it from, you know, a piece of broccoli or grains of rice or, you know, a steak, that it's chewed and beaten up enough that it can be processed by the rest of the body so that when it comes out the other end, you know, it's been extracted enough. And if you've ever eaten, you know, corn and you've not bitten through a kernel, you have seen that your body can't make its way through an uneaten, an unpierced kernel of corn. So that's what your teeth are there for. They're made to physically break these things up, and you have to be, I don't say aggressive, but you have to be sufficient in your chewing. And so as you have a grain of rice, you are going to activate your salivary amylase, and you are going to break up your starchy components into just smaller chains of glucose. And so then afterwards, you're going to have, so like that, like that, like that. And then it's going to go down into your stomach, and the stomach is going to inactivate because it's acidic. The stomach is made for protein digestion mainly, and the stomach, it is like a rock tumbler. You are going, as you eat your food, it goes down into the stomach, and then the stomach is going to take that food and it's going to rock tumbler it. It's going to push it against the wall and it's going to keep breaking it up, kind of like even like a washing machine, or it's going to have this like action of mechanical digestion along with, and as it's going to release stomach acid, and it's going to throw that acid against the wall with the protein and the carbs and the fat, and the protein is going to be digested, and the stomach is going to have this like beating up action. And it's kind of similar to the visual I usually have. Rock tumbler works well, but like a washing machine, and instead of like laundry soap, you're using acid to break down the strips of steak or the egg protein or the yogurt protein or the whatever kind of protein you've had in your meal, it's going to come up and then it's going to be beat up against it. And as this physical, mechanical hitting of the stomach walls, it's going to stimulate, because when you hit something, you stimulate it. It'll release more stomach acid, and the more acid gets produced, the more the protein gets digested, the more acid gets produced, the lower the pH drops. So your pH drops far enough, again, and then once your pH is low enough, the connection from your stomach to your small intestine will say, oh, it's acid enough, I'll open up, and now I can let this stomach chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, and that is your food that has been chewed and beaten up by your stomach and acidified. It releases into the small intestine. And so what we have here at this point, we have semi-digested carbohydrates and we have semi-digested proteins. Your fats are still undigested, and so then your carbohydrates and proteins are partially digested. Once you hit here, your pancreas is going to release neutralizing, well, it's bicarbonates. It's going to take the acid away, and the acid does help as a pathogen destroyer. And this is why when we talk about SIBO, I usually mention that SIBO is a backwards up type of pathology rather than a top-down pathology, because if you really have to, well, treat your digestive system poorly for the SIBO infection to have come, I don't want to say top-down, but when your digestion is weak, you have more of a tendency for this to creep backwards up. All right, so now getting back down to your rice, we are going to want to go down from these 4 or 5 chains down to smaller disaccharides, so 2 chains of glucose together. And so your stomach chyme empties out here, and then your pancreas is going to release chemicals to neutralize this acid, the acidic chyme, so that it's neutral, because carbs do best when they're digested in more of a neutral pH. That's just kind of how carb digestion works. And then same thing for fats. When you're doing your dishes or when you're washing anything, you need a detergent. You need a soap to break down fat. You don't need an acid to break down fat. If you put lemon juice over butter, it would just sit on top of the butter. But if you put dish soap over butter, it would emulsify and you would get droplets. And so here you don't need it to be acid. You need it to be neutralized, and then your body can keep working on it. So here we're going to have pancreatic amylase is going to help break up these chains into disaccharides. And this is when you have 2 glucose together, that equals maltose. So if you have a malt drink, like a beer or something similar, that's where that disaccharide flavor comes from. And so then afterwards, your pancreatic amylase is going to break up these guys, and then the body can not absorb disaccharides. It must be simple individual sugars. So we are not done. And this is incredibly important as to why rice is better than broccoli, for example, and why a starchy carbohydrate is a good carbohydrate to have for SIBO. When we go from maltose and we go into the lumen, so the lumen is just the inside of your small intestine, like this.
you are going to have, and we have microvilli. So if I took this and I pushed it out, you would see something like this. And then if I took this again and expand it out, you would still again see this. So you see all of these microvilli, villi, and you get this incredibly important surface area. And on this surface area, so if I bring this up over here, you are going to get brush border enzymes is what it's called. And these brush border enzymes, they are going to take your maltose, they're going to, I don't know how else to explain this, but they're going to grab onto it one at a time. It is going to be split down the middle, and immediately it's taken up by the body. As in, the microbes don't necessarily have a chance to grab onto it because the body is so efficient at grabbing sugar. It'll grab, and when I say sugar, I don't mean white sugar. I mean, it's so efficient at using glucose because that's what the brain uses. That's what the body prefers in a functional manner. It'll grab this individually, splice it, and then it gets absorbed immediately into circulation. And so here you have your little red blood cells. And this immediate absorption is the reason why we recommend starchy carbohydrates for SIBO and other small intestinal bacterial microbial overgrowths, is because when you do this and you have a fiber, so when you have a fiber is inert. It's literally stands in the way. So let's say if you had fiber, it would be like having this, like your maltose, but it has this like green barrier kind of around it. Your body does not have the capacity to go and grab this. It bounces off. It bounces off. It can't do it. And so, but when you have a microbe come in, it says, oh, this green stuff, I can eat it. So it's happy because, and we know that microbes eat these things because if I were to put broccoli, cabbage, literally anything, you can ferment it. You can look at a lacto-fermented product. You can look at any kind of microbial product and see and understand that these microbes, it doesn't make a difference how fibrous they are. They will eat it. And the reason why a microbe can't get to this is because the body is faster than a microbe. A body can grab something faster than a microbe can get onto it and physically start digesting it and eating it. That's a slow process. This is a slow process, but as it works its way in, it kind of gets this like private buffet. It eats, and then afterwards you get more microbes because they've multiplied and they've had food. And then, after a microbe eats, what is its byproduct? It makes gas. So either methane, usually, so carbon, H4, or hydrogen gas, so H2. And the small intestine is not made for expansion. It is I don't want to say delicate. It's not delicate. It is not made for, it's not made to balloon. And so when you have pressure build in gas, you feel bloated and it's really uncomfortable. And that is SIBO, and that is why you need to avoid the fibers that feed these guys specifically. And you can do that by monitoring. You use a guide, you use a cheat sheet that helps you identify which fibers can feed these microbes and what family of FODMAPs you need to specifically avoid. Because again, you don't need to avoid every letter in FODMAPs, but a certain set of letters may be more complicated for you to digest. And then you just starve out, you just eat meat. You have your meat, you have your starch, you have your plants that don't feed these guys, and eventually after 2, 4, 6 weeks, depending on how fast your progress is and how intense your infection is, after that period, you do a trial and you do a little bit. You do 2 spoonfuls of a previously symptomatic inducing food, so maybe broccoli is my example, and you say, how do I feel with this? Do I feel uncomfortable? And if you feel fine, then good. You do have to make sure you chew your food and make sure you're doing this appropriately. And then if you don't have a reaction, that's a green light not to have a feast. 2 bites, and then you go to 4 bites, and then you go to 6 bites, and then you troubleshoot. And the main concern is that people think that because they had no symptoms from 2 bites, then they can have 10 bites. And that's not the case. You have to train the body to do things a little bit at a time, and that's how you successfully solve for what the SIBO infection is in the body, eliminating it, giving your body time to reprocess, and the enzymes in bile salts are harsh for these guys, and they will naturally die out when you don't feed them. And then when you don't feed these guys for long enough, they will die out, and they will fall back down to the colon where they should be, and then you can start back up, not the diet that caused this infection, but a diet that helps maintain this type of digestive cascade that doesn't cause symptoms. And so maybe what that means is that, by the end of this experiment, you discover that you do better with, more like chicken, rice, and like, not that you can't have broccoli ever again, but you know that it has been problematic in the past. And so now, instead of having a huge thing of steamed broccoli with, like sesame seeds and, whatever kind of concoction you're making, but you have it smaller amounts, and then maybe you have different vegetables that you're prioritizing, or other foods that give you less symptoms, and then you go from there. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that you understand why you need to avoid certain foods in regards to a SIBO infection. Let's move on. I'm going to erase all of this, and then we're going to do a quiz on breakfast. So, you wake up. What have we done upon waking? What is it that we had to drink? We had warm water. And then we talked about how bitter greens help us. But bitter is the idea here. What is it at breakfast that we can have that is bitter? What will stimulate these bitter receptors? It's a common morning drink to help us wake up. So coffee or tea. It depends on, the type and how strong your coffee is, but, these things do stimulate and wake up digestion. And often I will say your coffee and or tea, don't have it on an empty stomach. Do have it with warm water beforehand, and or have it after your meal. You can still have this before, during, or after. We don't need it to be this science project. It's just breakfast. Let's make it something easy. And if you don't, if you don't like either of these, that's fine. You don't need to. You can also do like lemon juice to kind of get the body stimulated, because at the same time, coffee is rather acidic. There needs to be a protein. Why does there need to be a protein? What does the stomach require in order to function? What were those key ingredients? It requires zinc, it requires B1, and it requires chloride. These things can be brought through with usually eggs. You can do a breakfast sausage. You could do, fill in the blank. We're making, interestingly, we're making a meal plan that actually makes sense. Maybe you cook your eggs in a little bit of butter. Eggs are already fatty. You don't have to add an extra fat, but you can if you like. Maybe even if you want a slice of ham, I don't know. Maybe you're a dude that's going to the gym often and you want protein powder. You're going to want to make sure that if you're doing like a protein powder, you turn that thing over, protein powder, and you look at, are there micronutrients that are added? And if there aren't, you say, okay, so maybe you supplement it with a zinc or a B complex to get your day started. This is a full protein complex. These are complete proteins, but that's it. They don't have a micronutrient profile unless if you add it in artificially. And so you do need to pay attention to that. But these are helpful for people who are working on having sufficient protein in their diet so that they don't atrophy too far. An atrophied, weak digestive system performs poorly. I'll say it again. A weak, underfed digestive system performs poorly. A digestive system can be strengthened through sufficient calories and sufficient nutrition. If digestion is sluggish, you need to eat different foods and sufficient amounts of them. Next, carbohydrates. And so the protein here, all of these, they're going to also be fatty. And so, we check 2 boxes with that, and we check these boxes here too. So then carbohydrates, when we go and talk about what kind of fibers or what kind of like breakfast things work for us, a lot of the time, and we're talking about starches, yeah, if you want, you can do rice. You could do an English muffin. You could do sourdough bread. You could do regular bread toasted enough. You could do, of course, if you tolerate bread. If you don't, then don't. Oatmeal. And what are you doing? You are no FODMAP fibers that cause problems. And so, I don't know, maybe you like to have a little bit of onion in your morning scrambled eggs. And if you don't, and if you tolerate onions, have your onions in your scrambled eggs. Or, add an onion powder, or, and so on and so forth. But if you don't do well so you just need to identify the fibers that are causing issues and then not have them. So that's it. So, yes, this makes for a low fiber type of breakfast. That's okay. And this honestly, this is not far off from the type of breakfast I have. Fibers are good for you, but you can have fiber at lunch and dinner. You can have fiber at different times during the day. And I'm not a dietitian that's going to yell at you because you're not optimizing fiber as much as possible. Fiber is a tool. It's a tool. Protein's a tool. It helps muscles. Carbs are a tool. They help muscle action. It helps build things. Fat is a tool. It helps with making sure that you stay full. It makes sure that your fat soluble hormones work. It helps. Everything is a tool. Fiber is a tool. It helps with a thing. But if you don't need a fiber tool in your diet for you to be successful, then don't have the fiber. Let's not be dogmatic about it. I hope this helps with breakfast. And if you've made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please let me know in the comment section below. You can also find me at Cress, C-R-E-S-S, dietetics.com. And you can reach out to me there or book an appointment with me there if you are interested. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!